7th for the 10th, 2025. The time is 7 minutes past 10. And that means, as always, one thing, that there are very many F1 centric F1 update and news threads at which we need to pull. Over the next 20 minutes, we'll talk about Carlos Sainz. That shall put some respect on the smooth operator's name. So too, we'll talk about Andrea Stella and the fallout from McLaren papaya-coloured rulesgate. We'll talk about some Maximilian Verstappen. It's ironic now that it feels like the British press and media are putting some respect on his name. And then we'll talk about the emergency that is Scuderia Ferrari. It is chaos over there, especially when you realise that Brawn GP haven't competed in a Grand Prix for as near as makes no difference 16 years. Yet over the past 16 years, Brawn GP have spent more time atop the constructors standings than Scuderia Ferrari. Of course, they've got to pull themselves an emergency meeting, for this is not good enough. I can see Enzo Ferrari turning in his grave at the multitudinous ineptitudes of the red car and the yellow badge with the black prancing horse atop. In the first instance, let me show you something. Carlos Sainz Jr., that shall put some respect on his name. Look at that, 50 laps on mediums at Singapore. And again, the context is this: Carlos Sainz hasn't been great thus far season to date. I expected him to come in and go gangbusters, scorched earth on Alex Albon, who's not a bad peddler in and of his own right. But season to date, Carlos Sainz has underperformed massively. However, he's woken up now. Singapore, 50 laps on their mediums, holding off Ollie Bearman on quicker, fresher compound tyres. 49 laps to 50, blue flag, blah, blah, blah. Overtakes 5 cars in 9 laps. Hajar tried DRS trick on Sainz, but failed. This is the dude, you know what I mean? And again, it colours the conversation that we're about to have about Scuderia Ferrari. Many of the Ferrari engineers will kill and alive themselves to get a sniff of Carlos Sainz back in that car. Technical feedback, Mr. Extraordinaire, the man who rises all technical tide. You know what I mean? You know what I mean about Carlos Sainz? Like, Carlos Sainz is that guy, right? The stat goes something like this: that every time he joins a team and leaves, he leaves them in a much better position in the constructors than when he joined. So rich is his technical feedback. He gives, translates useful driver messages in a way that engineers and strategists can understand. That's who Carlos Sainz is. Oh, and by the way, I need to have a conversation about Fernando Alonso, driver of the day, some say, at Singapore. But it's kicked off between him and his old mate Sir Lewis Cole Davidson Hamilton, as it always does. This goes way back, 2007 settings. Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso will never ever be friends. Fernando went there under the auspices of "I am the driver, I am your Ayrton Senna, Ron Dennis. There is nobody who can beat me. I've just finished beating Michael Schumacher 05 and 06 back to back. So therefore, give me the red pen. I have the whip hand," Fernando was saying. "Not so fast," Lewis Hamilton said then, and has been saying that ever since. That's why Fernando and Lewis don't get on. And again, that rivalry bubbled to the surface at the Singapore Grand Prix. Did it not? Roll the clip.
Fucking hell, man. Cannot believe it.
Yeah, he knew it.
I cannot fucking believe it. I cannot fucking believe it. I mean, I cannot fucking believe it.
Yeah.
I cannot fucking believe it. Is it safe to drive with no brakes? Or he should...
Yeah, no, we are looking into it. We agree. We're checking track limits and stuff as well. I see, took some margin there. So run switch warm up, mate. Run switch warm up. That is P8 anyway, so good recovery.
Yeah, but this should be fucking P7. I mean, you cannot drive.
Yeah, it may well
like
be.
If you are alone on track. Yeah, I mean, no respect the red flag yesterday, today, free track for them, and maybe too much.
Now, Fernando Alonso naysayers will say that dude is a professional victim, always moaning, always Mr. Self-saboteur. I'm not sure where I stand in this argument, because on one hand, looking at the way that Sir Lewis got to the end of the Grand Prix, he didn't have any brakes. So surely that is unsafe, especially if Fernando Alonso is right, as he continues, that once upon a time they tried to disqualify him many cycles ago for having no wing mirror, or a loose one at the very least. Consistently inconsistent. Can you spell the FIA. But some will say, per the guys over at the race, Ed Straw, John Noble et al., that listen, when you're getting into the dying embers of a Grand Prix, of course you're going to make it to the line, just like Lewis Hamilton did, pushing the car over the line as near as makes no difference at Silverstone on 3 bloody wheels. This is to be expected. Of course, Lewis was going to cut some corners. Maybe he was right. The FIA were correct to give him a 5-second penalty. But what else do you expect? Lewis Hamilton responded in kind as follows, even tongue very firmly in cheek, with some Victor Meldrew memes. Go on, roll the clip and then we'll talk about it.
Believe it! I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Look at this. I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
Everybody loves a trier, Sir Lewis. He's tried to be humorous there, but I think he's missed the mark ever so slightly. The reference, of course, is to Victor Meldrew, 1 foot in the grave, legend of UK TV. But I don't know. It's 2025. Sir Lewis, Carl Davids and Hamilton, up your humour game. Therefore, there's a very many different places you could have taken this. Imagine if he'd put Alonso, you must always leave a space. You must always leave a space, and put together a bloody collage of all of Fernando Alonso's different moaning. GP2 engine. He could have won in, he could have smashed it, but Lewis chose not to. Lewis says Outlaw should have been blacked flag, unsafe and unable to stop quickly. True. I think that's why. Are you saying then, Outlaw and Max, that 5 seconds wasn't enough? That the FIA should have been harsher on Sir Lewis' childish behaviour? I mean, I hear Outlaw sometimes. But so, surely you've got to meet Fernando Alonso where he stands, don't you? Sometimes. And I've got to show you this as far as the drivers' standings, because the one that they call Maximilian Verstappen is still... I mean, he's a load of points away, isn't he? 63, if I recall correctly. Is he adrift of OJP in the Drivers' Championship with 6 rounds to go? By my very noddy maths, Max Verstappen over the course of the next 6 rounds with 3 sprints, if I recall correctly, will need to gap Oscar Piastri on average 10 points per race. That's ambitious, chat. Lando Norris, however, only 22 points adrift. Now, some are saying that if Max had won, we'd be having ourselves a very different conversation. Pressure cooker settings as far as the papaya-coloured team, and OJP then becomes a different driver. But 63 points is a lot, isn't it? And I was listening to a podcast. We talked about George Russell. I think a lot of credit has been given to George over the past 48 hours. He was brilliant as near as makes no difference the entire Singapore Grand Prix weekend. However, Ed Straw, again, shortly after speaking out British bias and how it doesn't exist at McLaren, again, that's another conversation for another day potentially. However, Ed Straw said something like this. That whilst George was brilliant this weekend, he wasn't as brilliant as, I don't know, a Maximilian Verstappen at Suzuka. It was very clear that the Mercedes W16 had pace on the rest of the field per the performance of it in the race. There was a couple tenths on it that George had in that car, at least as versus Max Verstappen. So it's a very different level of performance. George is brilliant. Do not get it twisted. Thou shalt put some respect on his name, but there's a difference, a chasm indeed, if you're characterising George's performance at Singapore as versus, I don't know, a Max Verstappen at Suzuka. They are very different entities. It wasn't like George was hanging on desperately for 62 laps in Singapore, just like Max was in Suzuka. And Lauren Meckes has underlined these points. He said he's talked about Max Verstappen and what he does so well, that it's his commitment, his level of technical feedback, that he conducts all of his activities and operates within this zero ego rule of engagement. I don't hate that. And again, this is from the legends over at MV33 Racing. If you are investing some Max Verstappen PLC, then go and follow that Twitter handle. Oh, and by the way, Charles Leclerc I feel like he's on the precipice now. There has been called an emergency meeting in Maranello. Scuderia Ferrari are at DEFCON 1. Why? Well, because this is Charles Leclerc over the radio at the Singapore Grand Prix. He's no longer driving the SF25. It's the Lyco 25. Roll the clip.
Lyco turn 14 and 16, next two corners. Cut the peak and Lyco. Rear left this temp hot. So rear left this too hot. We need to remove some braking energy and bring it back down. Rear left. Keep doing this.
Is there a problem?
Yes, we had a rear disc imbalance. You have recovered most of it now. Keep doing it, and then we go back normal.
Better?
Yes, it is.
Tell me when I can push again. I'm losing a lot of time though.
Okay, stop. Picking up the pace now. Gradually pick up the pace. Just keep some mild Lyco. That prevents the...
I mean, I can't even listen to it, or it sounds like a horror film. What are we doing? And ultimately, Charles Leclerc has enough and says, you know what, 200 metres this lap, I'm lifting and cut. What's the point here? I am Charles Leclerc, quickest, some say, point to point on the grid, and you have me in this no longer SF25, Lyco 25. This is not, it's ridiculous. I cannot blame. In fact, I would put forth the following supposition as we round third, that Charles Leclerc would be absorbing more risk were he to stay at Scuderia Ferrari post 2027 than were he to leave. Remember, Charles Leclerc is well respected. Everybody knows his pace. You've seen it ad nauseum. When he's had his Weetabix, there's barely anybody that can keep with him and catch him. If there's somebody that knows how to race Max Verstappen, not named Oscar Piastri, then it's got to be modern day Jean Alesi. He's gifted. He's a marketing man's dream. Good looking, has the pretty girlfriend as well. It's perfect. So then don't think for a second that Aston Martin won't be keen to sign him. Same for McLaren, same for Mercedes, same for bloody Red Bull. They'll all be invested in Charles Leclerc PLC, and that's why Scuderia Ferrari are having this emergency meeting. And oh, by the way, it's not just Charles. You know what I mean? It's not as if Sir Lewis Hamilton is having a great time out there with his brakes practically failing over the final couple of tours at the Singapore Grand Prix. How many holes can a bucket of water have in before it's no longer a bucket and it's just a hole? How deep can the rabbit hole go as far as Scuderia Ferrari and their multitudinous ineptitudes? Now you get this. Again, apparently word on the F1 curb is that there is this emergency meeting that Ferrari President John Elkann and CEO Benedetto Vigna are expected in Maranello, according to Sky Sports. F1, for the avoidance of doubt, all F1 publications are created equally, but some are created more equal than others. A serious and pragmatic meeting to understand how to emerge from one of the darkest episodes in Scuderia Ferrari history. Confrontation is necessary, but so are ideas and decisions. They had the opportunity to sign Adrian Newey. They did not. They had a good thing with Carlos Sainz, that level of technical feedback. And now that Carlos Sainz is once again enhorabuena, in the best of form, that decision-making process is only going to be called further into question. The Ferrari engineers will be looking at Frederic Vasseur like this. What, so you didn't sign Adrian Newey and instead you signed Sir Lewis Hamilton? How's that working out, chap? You got 2 to 3 years maximum out of Sir Lewis, where Carlos Sainz will be contributing to the Williams piece ad infinitum, in perpetuity, as near as makes no difference. Sign Frederic Vasseur. How's that going? Lest we forget, again, I'm going to state this for the avoidance of that because it's a chaos stat if true. Brawn GP haven't been in Formula 1 since 2009. Then they were dominant. That was the season of the double diffuser, etc. Ross Brawn is nothing if not a genius. Since then, though, they haven't been in Formula 1. 2009 was 16 years ago. In the constructors' standings between 2025 and 2009, Brawn GP have led the constructors for more time than Scuderia Ferrari. That, ladies and gentlemen, is insane. If ever there were cause for an emergency meeting at Maranello, that therefore would be it. And you know they always want to circle the wagons and make sure everything's nice and sexy as far as appearances. But this now is Shakespearean levels of false seeming. Nothing works. The car does not work. The communication is SH1T. Lewis doesn't like his engineer, his racing engineer Adami, nor does Charles Leclerc like his. You're going to hear the frustration with Charles Leclerc. What are we doing? Am I going to be able to push this car? I'm an F1 driver. Let me drive it. Therefore, I don't want to deal with all this nonsense. The bloody ride heights, the lack of rigidity as far as the suspension at the rear. It's too much. Let me drive. And so I say all that to say this. The rumour for the longest time now is that Charles Leclerc and team are considering their options. And as well, they might, one of the hottest prospects in Formula 1. Again, maybe none quicker when he's had his Weetabix. So why wouldn't he consider his options? Don't believe me? Well, Jacques Clerc is Charles Leclerc's guy and he's leaving for Cadillac F1. So what's to say that Charles Leclerc, that there haven't been conversations already had and that Charles Leclerc doesn't already have one foot out the door? Again, rumour and F1 speculation at each and every single junction here. But I think as far as eventualities, that no longer is this the most unlikely. It's going to get techier than techie things. Oh, and by the way, as we round third, let me give you this on McLaren. There's been a lot made. Andrea Stella said some things, and I've got to talk about it because, again, that's the hottest topic on the docket. Here's what Andrea Stella was quoted as saying, and again, we're talking about the fiasco, the papaya-coloured rules, Singapore, the cheeky love tap between Lando and Norris. If you no longer go for a gap, then you are no longer a racing driver. And of course, that's Lando and Norris doing his best Ayrton Senna interpretation. Here's what Stella's had to say. When you are racing as a team, you cannot have exactly the same interests for the two drivers. Interesting term of phrase, Andrea Stella. You cannot have exactly the same interest for the two drivers because they want to pursue their aspirations. Hang on, Andrea Stella. Listen, the community and particularly Australian media, like, what's going on here? How many times are you going to have Oscar Piastri season to date bend the knee for one Lando Norris, aka Dustin from Stranger Things? Because hitherto it's been Monaco. Oh, I need for Oscar to press Charles Leclerc. It's been Australia, hold station, Oscar. It's been Monza, invert. It's been the British Grand Prix. We're not intervening here. And then this race weekend, Lando love taps Oscar Piastri over the course of the first lap when the only rule, there is one rule, and that's papaya rules, and thou shalt not touch each other. Shortly thereafter, when assessing what happened in the race, CEO of McLaren, Zak Brown, said, that's hard and fair racing. What could that dude be watching? Because he can't have been watching the Singapore Grand Prix. Every time season to date, Oscar Piastri has even gotten close to the gearbox of Lando Norris. Oh, remember it's papaya rules. So aren't we playing consistent games here? Surely now, again, Shakespearean levels of false seeming. Tell me that you favour Lando Norris without telling me you favour Lando Norris. It's techier than techie things over at McLaren. And there's been a lot of talk about why Oscar Piastri wasn't on the podium. Apparently, if word on the F1 curb is to believe, per the guys and girls over at the race, there was meant to be a celebration. They cobbled it together. They didn't want to jinx it. It was a last minute thing. They said that all the team were going to be on the podium celebrating, but no drivers were going to be involved. It was a last minute thing to have Lando up there celebrating with the team. I will have you know, whilst Oscar Piastri is still giving interviews in the post-race press scrum. The optics speak for themselves. Now, said it all along, I'm not sure that there is sabotage at play, or at least we don't have evidence, proof positive to go that far. We don't. This is F1 apophony. We're connecting dots, correlation, common causation. The former does not imply the latter, not necessarily, but you can forgive Oscar Piastri, Aussie fans all around the world, for what's going on here. This looks and feels and smells like favouritism, so you can forgive Oscar Piastri fans for thinking as much, particularly when you see the optics. Lando wasn't meant to be on the podium, but there he is with the rest of the team doing the Constructors Championship celebration. Meanwhile, Oscar Piastri is watching from the post-race press scum. It's not a good look. The British are famous for throwing in Anzac by here. I can't even do it. Oscar to Ferrari. He can't be so depressed. What are McLaren supposed to do? It already happened. They can't change the past. And then comparing Monza to Silverstone is like comparing apples and oranges. Johnny, you weren't listening, chap. Do you want me to go through them again, Johnny, as you round third? Australia. First Grand Prix of the year. Do you remember it was changeable conditions, and when it went from wet to dry, Oscar Piastri wanted to have a go at Lando Norris, and the command then was hold station by race engineers Tom Stollard. Monza, you know the gig already. Invert, and don't mention qualifying when they told Oscar Piastri, listen, Lando made a mistake in Q2. Could you do us a favour and go and use some of your tyres and help the only other challenger that you have in the title of the drivers' variety? Can you help Lando get through to get... There's been too many. There's a cacophony of evidence now. If you want to believe sabotage, you don't need to look for evidence. There's loads of it. You are drowning in it, Johnny. Oscar should turn up to the Melbourne Grand Prix in the Mad Max it's techie. I don't give two rat turds about McLaren or papaya rules. I'm allergic to. I think everybody's allergic to it now. How can McLaren F this up so badly? It's always good when you're trying to interject and be so ruthlessly egalitarian. There's always going to be friction between that ethos and Formula One. Equality is not a thing in Formula One. Motorsport, motor racing is the infamous quote from Michael Massey, and I think he's right, not at the right time, but in motorsport, SH1T happens. There is always injustice. The racing gods will never ever treat the 20 currently on the grid fairly, and it just doesn't work like that. Lando will get a 5.9 second pit stop right, but the problem is this, not at Lando because he drove very well, particularly on Sunday. The problem that the F1 community have as far as McLaren, if you're going to interject, be even-handed in your interjecting. If you're going to tell Lando to hold station, then if you're going to tell Oscar to hold station in Australia, surely we should have heard them tell Lando to hold station. I have not heard that command yet. If you're going to warn Oscar for overtaking, trying desperately to overtake Lando Norris, if you're going to warn him that that's not quite in the rules as far as the papaya rules of engagement, if that's what you're going to say to Oscar, then surely when Lando crashes into Oscar and DNFs, damn near DNFs the both of them in Canada, surely we want to hear something over the radio then. I know, because Lando did one of these and said mea culpa. It's techie than techie things, chat. I don't want to call even-handedness or lack thereof, but it certainly looks and feels like that. Oscar doesn't get mad often, and when he does, he gets mad like I do, quietly, and long-term revenge thinking shows that I do think that Leclerc is in the same as Alonso without two titles. He makes the mistake to stay at Ferrari because he loves them. He makes choices with his heart. Well, Charles Leclerc for the longest time has been talking about he doesn't just want to win. He's promised to his dad, right? It was one of them on his deathbed, that not only was he going to drive for Ferrari, but he was going to win Monaco, tick, 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 done both of those, and then he was going to win a driver's championship in brackets for Ferrari. And again, anytime you put a microphone in front of the face of Charles Leclerc, he will tell you this, that his goal isn't just to win a championship, it's to win for Ferrari. Driving Ferrari means more for him, and that's where it's going to get techier than techie things, I'm telling you. If Charles Leclerc wishes to fulfill on the promised and not insubstantial potential of his driving career, point to point, some say he's the quickest on the current grid, if not one of the quickest that we've ever seen. And if Charles Leclerc wants to fulfill that promise and deliver upon that as of yet unfulfilled potential, I think he might have to leave. And in the background, as at the time of writing, the 7th of the 10th, 2025, 10:30, I think this is happening. I think Jock Clear leaving is as clear an indication as you could get that Charles Leclerc and team, Jean Todd's son, Nick Todd, are now considering their options. It will get techier than techie things. Between now and later on, 8 p.m. we go again, long and live, talking about all the relevant discussions. If you're a brand new member, get yourself onto the Discord on the community tab. There is a link between now and next time. The prosecution rests no further questions. Your Honour.